திரும்பவும் ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிடலாமே. திரும்புலன் திருமுலன்
Sir, I'm an online. Gayatri ma'am.
ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிடலாம்.
Gayatri ma'am, are you on?
Yes, sir.
Shall we start now?
Yeah. Yeah, sir. Is it audible, sir?
Good evening, everyone. I invite Gayatri, HOD from Commerce Department, to give a welcome address.
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. I take pleasure in welcoming all the members of the top management, my colleagues, and all the valuable participants. The current scenario in stock market is that everyone wants to invest, but they should have the basics of where to invest, how much to invest, and when to liquidate with maximum profit. I am glad to invite the resource person, Mr. Anush Raj, research analyst at Prime Investor, who is here to give us a clear-cut framework of the basics and techniques that are necessary to be a successful investor. He has also been a certified financial planner at Financial Planning Safety Boards of India, a subsidiary of FBSB in USA. It's time for him to take over the session. Please, sir, to take over the session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Now I have the session to Anush Raj, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Gayatri ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank
So, yeah, the intro about me is given by Gayatri ma'am, short and sweet. So quickly, let me go on into my slides. So I just have a short time to complete a lot of things. So we can go to the first slides, the second one. Yeah, we can move. Okay. So what I've given to start with is the market has always seen crashes in the past, and we have always seen a recovery. So we are not something new about market crashes on the whole. So in the past, we have seen Harshad Mehta scam, the tech bubble, the real estate crisis, which is also known as the Great Recession. And the recent one is what we are all experiencing now is the COVID crash. So, but if you see in my PPT, you would see there is a fall of 53, 56, and 61% in a span of over 1 year, 1.5 years, and 1 year for all the previous crashes. And the time taken for recovery is a little bit almost to half the time more than what it took for actually the crash to happen. So in the same scenario, can we also assess that the COVID crash is also going to take maybe 2 to 3 months for it to recover? Like, let us think positively, it is going to happen that way. But let me also debate on why it is not going to happen so. If you see in the bottom, I would have mentioned two graphs, the Nifty current levels as of today, and also the overall scenario of Nifty for the last 20 years. So the Nifty has fallen by about 38%, and it has recovered by 31%. So it actually sees like there is a real return of only -7%, but it is not so. The Nifty will actually have to go up by almost 70 to 80% from the fallen levels of March 23rd to actually regain its level. So the market looks like it is headed for a V-shaped recovery if you look on the graph on the right, but it is not so. It is still in the bear market, and as of the 200-week moving average, we are still not yet out from the bear market itself. So if that is the scenario, why is the market even moving up? So what is fueling the rally behind this sudden market uptake? Sir, next slide, please. Excuse me. So yeah. So things that are fueling the market as of now is the market has been reopened in most of the areas, as in the economy itself has been open in most of the areas in terms of India, except for the 5 major cities or districts which are still closed and might be opening in the month end or so if the numbers reduce. So you're all already aware of the number of cases, and the overall 51% of the cases are concentrated only in these 5 cities. So as a whole country, we are seeing less cases in terms of the rural India space. The new RBI's move and these finance ministers move in the last month, inflating about 400 billion INR to the Manrega development, which is more of rural unemployment sector development. And also the RBI's move on cutting the repo rates and reverse repo rates, plus the big stimulus package introduced by the PM and the finance minister. So all these put together are fueling the market to go up. But we cannot just directly determine that this is a way to the future and the market is running up and we all should go behind it and start purchasing stocks and loading up our basket to gain some gainful profits. So let me come to that in a little later slide. So before that, let us also have a global picture of what is happening. So this graph here shows the S&P 500 index. The S&P 500 index is nothing but the US top 500 globally or most domestically high traded companies. So these companies are put together, they form the S&P 500 index, just like the Nifty 50, how we have the top 50 companies in India. So if you see this graph, the S&P 500 is already back on track. It has recovered fully based on its January values, and it's a little bit more than 100 points lesser than what it was in the early February levels, which should recover in a couple of nearing maybe in a week or so. But if you see all these things and if you really compare why this is all running up, and is this really an indication that the COVID era has ended and the market has really started to boom back? It is actually not, because the stock market can never be an indicator for the entire economy. So maybe the economical boost can give a representation through the stock market, but the stock market cannot be an indicator for the economical growth. So it does not work vice versa. In this S&P 500 index, even though you all know about the recent scenarios in the US, current scenarios, maybe in the riots of the death of George Floyd, the racism points, etc., etc. With all these, the S&P 500 has still managed to rally up and clear out all the losses and stay back into the profit-making level. So let me go on to say, what is the economical factors behind this. Before that, I would also have to compare this current market scenario with the past previous history. So in all the previous histories, crashes which we have seen earlier in 2008 or 1992 or whatsoever, all those crashes were based on something to do with finance or somewhere into banking or a particular sector crash or a particular person's failure or a government's failure. But this particular COVID crash is something, this is not at all related to all of those. It is more of an economical problem and an economical demand problem. So this is completely fueled by a lot of economical factors rather than pertaining to one particular sector. So to understand this crash and how do you actually make a profitable trade out of this, you have to first understand the basics of the economics behind this. So that is why my next slides, couple of slides will talk a lot about covering the macroeconomical points and the government's decisions on reviving the economy. So next slide, please. Sir, next slide. Yeah, thank you. So as you can see, the GDP growth rate has continuously fallen from December to March. Of course, the GDP is going to fall much more higher in the June quarter, since GDP is announced only quarterly in India. So you will not be able to know the exact figure until June is coming. So most probably, people are expecting it to be in a negative value. It is not that there is no production, but just that this is all shown as a growth figure. The actual GDP differs from the GDP growth rate, which is published by the Government of India and the RBI websites. So what is the difference between GDP and the GDP growth rates is that GDP is just a number of all your values of finished goods and services produced in the country. Actually, if you can directly compare the GDP as a number with the China's GDP, there will be a lot of difference. But if you compare the growth rate between China and India, maybe India's growth rate will be 7.5% and China's growth rate will be 6%. So per se, as a statistical point of view, people might think India is growing faster than China, and that's why India is picking up country. But if you take in terms of numbers, India's GDP, let us assume it to be 1 lakh, and China's GDP assumed to be just 10 lakhs. The 6.5% or 7% of India, and compared to a 5% growth in China, the number in terms of number, China's growth will be much higher to India. So the GDP growth rate alone cannot be a determining factor. Of course, yeah, in terms of that is in terms of a global perspective. If you have to compare it to a domestical scale, yeah, GDP growth rate is the number one issue to look at. So going on to what are all these sectors which got hit badly. You all know most of the factors: the aviation sector, the real estate, the retail, the automobile division. So all these are the sectors which suffered a major outbreak during all this pandemic, and their stocks fell crazy, almost about minus 80% on a particular stock also. And on the other hand, there are a few sectors which also look positive: e-retail, the medical divisions, the pharmas, all the ITS services, etc. So all those, on the contrary, have a positive growth. So what do we infer from this? So all these losses, heavy losses in terms of revenue, they all run to billions. So all these losses are in turn not only losses for those particular sectors or companies, those losses are in turn even reflecting in the government's income. So government has different incomes. It gets income from the people's taxes, it gets income from GST, it comes from your corporation taxes, and a lot more. The GST which they charge in CGST is makes a quite lot of a bigger percentage, almost close to 25% of the entire government's income. So if you look at the graph below, you would have seen the usual central government income for every month will be an average of about 20,000 crores, and suddenly there is a steep fall, and it is almost 1/4 of what it used to be. It is just around 5,300 crores. So that is how much the revenue is lost, including for the government and all these sectors. So if all these sectors are going to keep losing money, and they don't have enough capital to work with, so this all is going to lead to the bigger problem, which we are going to discuss in the next slide. So next slide, please. Yeah. So unemployment. Most of you might seen this graph already. So this is available in the unemployment India.cma site. So this keeps changing on a monthly basis. So as of June 6th, this is the situation of how the unemployment is. So on an average for the past 5 years, it has been maintaining at a percentage of 10 to 11 maximum. So that is how it has been running. But suddenly there is almost a double or a double and a half times increase in terms of unemployment rate. So it is at the highest in terms of this decade. And the overall Indian average stands about 21.7%. The urban levels stand at 23, and the rural levels stand at little lesser at around 21. I figured most of the participants would be from Tamil Nadu, so I just mentioned it as separately as 33%. So what is all this about is that, see, compared to all other countries, if you take the European Union or the US or whatever country, if you take most of the developed economies, all these countries give you something called an unemployment insurance. So this unemployment insurance ensures that all its citizens get paid at least a minimum of 60 to 70% of what they were being paid by their companies in the past. So that is something which is not available as a product which you can purchase. That type of insurance product is still not available in India. Why? Because there are about 30 million unemployed people, or more than 30 million unemployed people as of 2019 data, and by seeing all these graphs you would have known how much it would have increased right now. So because of this, insurance companies, really do fear about giving away these types of insurance. And there's only one thing which we all can, take it up is the ESI, based insurance offered by the government under the Rajiv Gandhi Samrik Yojana scheme. But these amount to only a very, very less population or the less crowd of the working crowd. In India, the most of the workforce, if I take the unorganized sectors alone contributes to about 25% of the entire working force. So this 25% of the unorganized sector do not have access to this ESI, or nor do they have access to this, any kind of insurance. So these people are all, out of jobs and mostly out of money, and hence the overall market has very less liquidity. And maybe that should be one other factor, why there are a lot of savings coming down. So in the recent days, if you have seen the news in the month of April or so, there is a monthly SIP target which goes into your schemes, such as your PPF, your monthly post office schemes, or whatever. All those came down by more than 50%. All these are an indicator that people are not making enough cash, and more than their expenses, they are not able to save their income. So that is why the unemployment is one other area which is a very scary part in terms of reviving the economy. So this, if you take it as a scale, and if you directly compare it with the stock market, only as and when this levels come back to the previous level, which means that the economy is actually stabilizing, or the economy is actually pushing towards growth. So that is the main part which proves that your GDP is going to go up, and all the sectors which we have seen as negatives or who all lost their revenues, they all will start making some revenues again. So until these things happen, there is no proof that your market is actually reviving and your economy is growing. So the current stock market which is running did not factor in all these, or is not factoring in all of these. It is completely unbiased and completely rational also, I should say. So that is the reason why I told you this stock market cannot be a direct indicator of the economy. I've got more examples on that. Let's see in the next slide. Sir, next slide, please. Okay, so this is an interesting one. So this is called the Purchasing Managers Index. So this was first found by the US people, of course, by the Institute of Supply Chain Management in the year 1984. So how they started was they had about 400 members. They were all working in different sectors, and all these members were questioned on a monthly basis, on maybe on the 30th of every month or 1st of every month. And they will take a recorded question and answers. The question and answers stand very simple, the most probably the answers. So you just have to give one of these three answers. So it is better, same, or worse. And the questions to you will be: how was the new orders? How was the output of the factory? How was the employment rate of the factory? How was the suppliers' delivery time? And what is the rate of the stock items purchased? So these are the types of questions which all these purchasing managers will be asked, and they would be asked to answer at as better, same, or worse. So they will combine all these better, same, and worse, country-wise or state-wise, and they will add it up and bring it up to a score. And this score has a mean value or of an average value of 50. So this 50 indicates as your base level. So if the value is greater than 50, it indicates that the country or that particular sector is growing. If it is below 50, it means that it is not actually, I shouldn't say degrowth, it is more like contraction. So it is just slowing down a little bit. But if you take this PMI of a whole country and see, and then also the PMI seems to be below 50, it is a slow point, or an indicator, or a lead indicator, I should say, which says that the country might slip into recession in the coming years. yet again, this is also a little bit of a flawed sample because all these PMIs were mostly used by the manufacturing companies. Let us take, US or Germany or France, one of those developed countries. Most of their manufacturings may not be actually done inside the country itself. So, they all have shifted to either China or India or any of the Asian countries. So under that scenario, maybe the data given by them will be a little bit lesser. So their averages vary slightly different. So it does not mean that if US has a PMI of 40, they are going into recession. It is more concentrated towards the manufacturing economies such as India and China. So that is about PMI. So in the current scenario, if you can see the graph clearly shows India has been maintaining an average of 50 for about the last 5 years. And suddenly in the March, April, it has gone down by almost 50%. Which means the manufacturing output of entire India as a whole has gone down by more than 50%. So this manufacturing includes all sectors, not only pharma or automobiles. It involves all sectors. So as a whole, if the purchasing managers index is falling, it indicates that there is going to be no new development, or there is going to be no new employment, or all the subsidiaries of the companies are also facing a lot of financial and also general troubles in terms of running their companies, their day-to-day working capital, all those stuff. So because of this, most of the stock analysts, such as myself and a lot of people, we use the PMI as a lead indicator, if we want to select a particular sector and we want to know how it is going to perform for the next quarter, we always do a prep check on this and then we take it forward. So this PMI graphs mainly shows the forecast also. So as per this forecast, India is not entering the 50 level at least till the December quarter. So which is again, coming back to my previous point. So the stock market which is running should actually start running from December, but it has an early jump start, which might take a fall again if it does not actually see the GDP growing, and it might again start growing back up after the September quarter, and proceeding into the December, it might even start going upward. So this is about the purchasing managers index. So this purchasing managers index is done by a company called IHS Market. So they are a London-based company. So they are only the all this data is given by that company. Sir, next slide, please. So this slide will take a little bit long. Okay. So this is the scenario which was formed and done by HSBC Global Asset Management. Their chief investment officer Bob, I was present in a meeting. And, they had shared this data. So I just thought, why not? I'll share that data to you people as well. So this data here represents their calculation or their forecast about 3 different scenarios on how the global GDP levels will start picking up back, which is the actual or should be the actual indicator of the economical growth. So there are 3 scenarios here. So let us start going from the bottom. So the first scenario is all the scenarios are based on when the the vaccine is arriving or when the vaccine is actually available. Maybe the vaccine is even ready by September or October late this year, but the availability of the vaccine across all countries, all states, all rural and urban areas might take a lot of time. So factoring all of those into account, the nearest part of the starting point of vaccine will be the starting of 2021. So if the vaccine is getting rolled out in 2021, there is going to be a GDP index which is going to go back up from the first quarter of 2021, and it is going to keep on moving forward. So, but there is a slight difference between that and the second scenario, which is mid 2021 we get the vaccine, almost 6 months later. If you see, the graphs look almost similar, but just that the the graph in the middle has a little bit of a larger gap between the older GDP growth and the current or the expected GDP growth. That difference there is going to be a permanent loss in the growth rate of GDP, which we will never be able to catch up. That is going to be a permanent loss. That loss can never be recovered, even if the vaccine is coming up as early as the first quarter of 2021. And in the third scenario, the topmost graph, the vaccine is coming out even later. It is coming out only in the last quarter of 2021. You would have seen the graph is completely different. There is a permanent diversion. There is an angular gap in which that GDP and the new GDP, the older GDP which we were traveling at, the growth rate, and the new growth rate which we are going to follow might not completely match. So that is going to be a major problem. So most economists are believing it that the second situation, where there is not a very big damage to the GDP growth rate, but yeah, of course, there will be a consistent or a probable loss in terms of GDP growth index. So that is the 60% probability of happening, and the quick recovery mode maybe has about 25% of the probability, given that a lot of companies are trying to catch up. The last situation where the vaccine comes out in 2021, the late 2021, may not be really happening, or it has a slight chance of about 10 to 15% or less. So how does this affect your stock market? So yeah, coming back to that again. So all these are going to in turn reflect in all the negative cases which I have shown in the last 3 slides. Your difference in unemployment, your PMI index number, and all your GDP growth rate going down, and your losses in various other sectors, etc., etc. So all these will start picking up only based on this scenarios happening. So the quicker it happens, the quicker it is going to revive, and it is going to show an actual growth. The later it takes, and so on and so forth. So that is how we can look at how the growth of the GDP will be, and how the growth of the stock market in parallel to the GDP will be. But there is something tricky about the stock market, is that the market factors all of this in and moves a little bit ahead than the GDP's number. So all the data which we see, all the reports which we see, your quarterly results or your annual results, which most people used to trade with, once they see ICICI posting a good result of about 20% profits, or they see HUL making 10% growth in their revenue. So suddenly that's when, people go and start to buy their stocks and accumulate them. But the actual market players, or I should say the star investors or the major players, such as your mutual funds, banks, all those people who actually put their money in analyzing the stocks and companies, they do not actually look out for the results as a lead indicator. Rather, they look out for results which they look at more about on the expense areas rather than the profitability areas itself. So they look more about how much capital expenditures the company has done. Say, for example, simple example, let us take Ashok Leyland as a company as an example. So let us say the company does 2,500 crores or 25,000 crores as their EBITDA, earnings before incomes and taxes. And the company decides to set up a new plant, say suppose in Andhra or Karnataka or wherever. And they spend this 25,000 crores of EBITDA money in their new plant, and they set up the whole new plant in 1 year. So that particular year, their return statements will actually not show any profits at all. They will actually write it off as their capital expenditure, and there will not be any meaningful profit left at the end. So if you are going to see this, and if you're going to trade based on those facts, it is not going to give you any benefit. So actually, a retail trader will look at, okay, no, Ashok Leyland has no profits this year, which means their stock price will go down. So let me sell the Ashok Leyland stock. But what an analyst does is, where did this 25,000 crore go? What have they made use of it? And what is it going to be the future revenue earning perspective of this 25,000 crore? So say suppose they have put a plant in such a way that their usual capacity is about 1,000 buses a year, and this particular plant can give about 200 buses extra, which means there is going to be a 20% increase in revenue, and also a 20% increase in their profits year on year for the next continuous life cycle. So that is going to prove that Ashok Leyland is going to be a profitable company, rather than Ashok Leyland giving a post saying that, yeah, this year we have done 25,000 crores in profits. So that is the overall view of how people trade on a day-to-day basis and how they actually should trade. So quickly coming back to our sessions, our economical scenario. So there is also this moves done by RBI on various rate cuts, and that also has different effects on various sectors of economy. So I'm just going to quickly brush up on those as well. So next slide, please. Okay. So I hope most of you will be already knowing the difference between the repo and the reverse repo rate. So not going to go deep into it. Repo rate is the rate at which RBI lends the banks the money, and reverse repo rate is the rate at which RBI gives interest for the money which is lent to the RBI by various banks. So that is the basic difference between repo and reverse repo. So all your loans which you take, your car loan, your home loans, etc., they'll all be mostly linked to your repo rate or your MCLR rates. And all your savings accounts interest and your FD interest and your various scheme interest, everything will be linked to your reverse repo rate. So this is the basic difference between these two. So I've given two scenarios where, in the first scenario, let us see, who has gained because of this rate cuts. Somebody who has taken a 30 lakh loan, with the 7.4% as an annual interest, will be paying about 2.87 lakhs as interest or as EMI every year. But due to this rate cut, he will be paying up only 2,79,000. So he has a savings of about 8,712 rupees. This is for a person who has gained. But RBI is not going to simply give gains to everybody. So that actually has to take it out from somebody to give somebody else the gains. So from who has it took the gains? So it has took the gains from all the fixed deposit holders, all your parents and mine, or all the retired people of India who all have their income in FDs and who are really relied upon those income for their survival. So their interest rates are going down, and this metric which I have given here is for SBI, and there is difference between banks to banks. So say suppose a 5.5% FD is going down by 40 basis points to 5.1%. So their overall interest per year goes down by 12,000. So that's almost 1,000 rupees a month, which might look small in terms of number, but for certain categories of people, that number do really matters a lot. So what the general public will think? So they'll all want to move out of this FD and they will want to move into a different sector where they make a slightly higher interest and make a profitable trade out of this. The oldest schemes of RBI, which was the 7.75% taxable bonds, was another interesting factor. So which means if you don't have, if you don't fall under the income tax slabs of under 5 lakhs, you actually make a very good interest out of it. 7.75% tax free is actually a very good return. It is a safe return. It's a risk-free return because it is backed by the RBI itself. But as of 27th of May, RBI has discontinued the product. Why? Because they actually want to make the FDs look attractive rather than pulling all the retail investors fund to RBI itself. So if all the investors are going to pull out their money from the banks, so what else the bank do for liquidity? So that is why the RBI has moved out of this 7.75% taxable bonds, which was a star product in various sectors, in various categories. So upon all this, this is not the first time RBI is doing this. RBI has been doing this for quite a while. So my next slide will tell how long it has been doing it. Sir, my next slide, please. Yeah. So you have to see this slides one by one. So on the top left slide, my first slide is the repo rate slide, and the second on the right one will be the reverse repo rate. In both the slides is for a 1 year data from April of 2019 to the current scenario. So if you see, RBI has almost cut down the reverse repo not by 0.4%, by actually it has reduced almost by 2%. So 2% of repo rate reduction is actually pretty huge. And the same thing has happened with the reverse repo rate also. So why does RBI reduce this repo rate? So if I reduce the repo rate, which means the banks will also reduce the interest to its customers. So customers will start borrowing more. Thereby the purchasing power will increase. Thereby more purchases will happen. Thereby companies will start getting more revenue, and thereby their revenues will grow. In turn, the government will get more taxes, and that's how the flow goes. But in our scenario, sadly, that has not happened. If you see the graph right below the repo rate, so that is the loan growth collapsing. So the loan growth, the 6.9%, 6.4%, what I've given is month on month, how much have they increased in terms of their loan book value. If you see from April 2019 to February 2020, every year they have seen a sharp cut, and after September, when the automobile sector started having troubles and all the auto stocks started falling, so the loan growth literally was not very high, and it all stagnated there. And almost in February 2020, it is barely nothing. It's almost 0.7%. So which clearly states that the RBI's move of reducing the repo rates so that people will start getting more loans and it will actually move to a betterment of the economy did not happen. So all these data are freely available in the RBI's website, so you can actually see it. On the other side, so if banks are not lending money to the people and people are not really getting the loans, where is all the money going up? So that is a very surprising thing to know. All the money is going to the RBI itself. So the banks are not taking any risks in terms of lending companies and people the money. Rather, they are feeling it to be safe in the hands of RBI itself. Hence, if you see on the right side, by April of last year, that is the 30th April of last year, RBI's cash of all the bank holdings was about 11,488 crores. And if you see April of this year, it is almost 7,35,000 crores. That is a very huge increase, and that sharp increase has seen almost doubled in the month of March and April due to this lockdown. So why has why all the banks have started doing this? The banks are also here, not only they are also not here just to serve the people. They are also here to make some profits out of it. So their profits are dependent on how much interest they make through loans, and also how much loans actually start paying up. So all this COVID pandemic has started is that there is going to be a lot of credit defaults. Credit defaults means that a lot of people who have borrowed may not repay their loans in the upcoming future. Some industries might go down, some shops will close, and they might never reopen. All those scenarios will lead to a debt block or a credit default of that particular customer or a company. So all these are going to fear the banks, or it has already has a grip or gripping fear on all those banks. So they have stopped lending it to the customers, and in turn they are feeling it safe to be in hands of the RBI. So, and also the recent moves of the finance minister, changing the MSME criteria and putting up a lot of other companies. So previously, it was about if you are a 10 crore investment company, you fall under the medium scale companies. But now, even if you are a 20 crore investment company and up to even 100 crore of turnover, you still fall under the MSME category. So which means, and also it has said that it will give up to a 30% cover on the exposure. Banks always look for guarantees, and based on guarantees is what their loan books are all about. If you take this particular 30% exposure, it is actually good because the person who is guaranteeing your 30% exposure is a sovereign entity. It is the government of India itself. Still, banks are not very clear on how to go about the process, and no bank has come up with a plan of how they are going to initiate the process and go about lending it to people. So that is still a long way. So let us see how it goes about. So as of now, the banking sector is staying very cautious, I should say. They are not too much into lending. So which means their loan books are not going to grow. So if their loan books are not going to grow, obviously it will reflect in their balance sheet. So yeah, you see, I'm just trying to give you an overall picture how the banking sector is going to be. So if somebody is looking out for a short-term gain by investing money in banking, it may not happen. But somebody is looking for a long term, and if you want to know is anything is cheaply available, I would say everything is cheaply available. India is right now in a very cheap point to invest, but for the long term, not for the short term. So that is the thing about RBI. So there was a quick question. So let me go on to my next slide, sir. Next slide. Okay, so this slide will talk about what has India planned in terms of its growth, and the major question that is juggling around all the financial editorials is about can India become the next world's manufacturing hub, or the world's factory as they say it. Yes, India is trying very hard to do it. India has already, proposed a lot of companies in US, Europe, and so on, who have their factories in China to put up their plants in India. But there is a huge problem. See, already all these companies are in a severe cash crunch, and setting up a new facility in India will involve a lot of capital expenditure, or to say capex. So that is something which the companies might not have right away. Maybe larger companies like Apple might have, but a smaller company or some company which has been growing for the last 5 years, they all might not have such kind of inputs. And Apple might be a bigger company, but they might also be dependent on such smaller companies as well. So if even Apple moves to India, and if they are not able to get the products at the rates what they used to get it in China, then it does not make any sense for them to move in the first place. Also, in terms of the infrastructure provided by China, it is completely top notch. They provide a very good quality of labor. They're doing the highways. They have a separate zone and a lot of stuff. So all those things may not be possible in India in a short period. Maybe in the long term it is possible. Immediately it might not be possible. Hence, companies might not look at India in the recent times. I'll also give an explanation why. Before that, if all of these happen positively and companies really decide to move to India, China has one more way of stopping it. They will simply go ahead and devalue their currency. So just a quick concept of devaluing your currency. So what devaluing currency means that China goes and sells a lot of their yen in the global market and buys dollar. So the demand for dollar goes up against the yen, so the value of yen falls. End of the day, the factories are interested in only making so much yen. Say suppose they made 25,000 yen last year, they want to make 30,000 yen this year. But from an US buyer perspective, an US person who has bought a product from the China for $1, since the Chinese yen rates against the dollar has fallen by 50%, this time for the same $1 he can buy two of those products. So he's having 100% no, benefit in the trade. So during these scenarios, the people who have been a regular customer of China might not move away from China. This is not something new. It has already done. China has already done this earlier in August 2019 when Trump imposed a huge a law which said that if you are going to import it from China, and there's going to be a 10% additional taxes which you have to pay. And at that point in time they were importing about 300 billion worth of stocks. So all those, so just even if you pay the taxes and still if you want my product to be cheaper, so China made that move earlier, so there is a possibility they can move to it again. So that is once again another point. A lot of people thanking me. Thank you. I'll reply you soon. So my next slide, please. Okay. So yeah, this is what this will be my last slide. So yes, if at all India's Make in program succeeds, and all of the things which I told above, which is very hypothetical, does happen, still all these companies are they've been sticky to a buyer. It is very hard for them to move out of a buyer. They will not. Even if they do, India will still be seen as just as an additional supplier, including China, not as an exclusive supplier. And if in terms of stocks, which stocks are looking at the positive side, anything in the utility sector, healthcare, and ITES are going to have a huge upside potential, because these are something which has a good market space in India when compared to China itself. When exclusively in the ITES domain, India is doing extremely well. We have some very good companies like TCS, Infosys. All those are well managed companies, so they all have a very high upside potential in terms of making profits. So my last point will be the stock market is not the economy. So that was my opening statement as well. So if you are looking at the stock market's revival, and if you are looking to make money, you should look at the growth rate of the economy. If you think the economy is on set for growth and it is back to its older levels, yes, the stock market will grow. If not, the stock market might rally, but there is a possibility it will fall. So this is about my session. I think I've covered the major points and well within the time frame. So yeah, thank you. If there is any questions, I can take a few.
Dear participants, any questions, put in chat box. Any questions, please put in chat box.
Okay. The migrant laborers move to native, how far it can affect our economy. Uh, yeah, Amrita Padmanabhan. Yes, yeah, I can take up that question. So this labor's move to this native, yes, of course, that is quite a threat for the economy. But it does not affect all the sectors. No, it specifically affects a very few sectors, a little in terms of manufacturing, and largely in terms of real estate, which I've already mentioned in my second slide. Real estate is already fallen. It is not looking to grow up at least in the next 2 to 3 quarters. So until they're all back and rates start stabilizing, real estate is going to have a huge problem. And all the construction companies have already posted their standings. Even L&T has posted a loss, and it has even posted about a potential loss of about 12,000 crores in the coming quarters. So yes, the move is going to be radical. Uh, we have to wait and see how it is all going to get back. Is it right to invest in the pharma industry? I think Gopi CP has asked this question. Pharma industry, Gopi, actually, pharma industry has already rallied up, man. So if you want to go invest now, yeah, it is still a pricey one. You can do it, but you might not expect a very large return because the market have already rallied up. So you can maybe wait a couple of more months, see if there is going to be any change to those. If the economy does not pick up in the coming quarters, and then you can take a call. Is it good to invest in gold bonds, sir? Okay, see, I'm not going to tell whether it is good or bad. I'll just tell you how different it is to invest in a gold bond. Okay, so first thing, the gold bond is not liquid. Okay, if you invest money in a gold bond for 8 years, your investment is stuck. Okay, that is one thing. Previously, their returns were not taxable. Now the interest which you get, the 2.5% interest, and your the gains, everything is going to be taxable. Plus, always your bonds will not be directly priced with the current gold price. It will be slightly higher. So that is, again, you are going to pay a premium on the bond. So you have to beat the premium and also the inflation rates. So it is still a good investment. It's a sovereign investment. But the only problem with the gold bonds is that it is not at all liquid, at least for the first 8 years. Is it gold price increasing? General question. So no, gold price is not always increasing. It does go down. Okay. So if you see gold price for the last 50 years and you have to adjust it to the inflation, it's okay. There is a return between the actual return and the real return. So the actual return might be higher, but if you compare it with the real return adjusting to inflation, the gold price have also fallen. So bad that gold prices has a falling practice of continuously 5 years. They would have given a negative return also. So gold is always not growing. It just looks as if it is growing. It has also fallen. Is it possible to become India as an economic superpower in the future? That is one very tricky question. And also a political one, so I might not be able to answer it. What about investing in gold coins instead of stocks? See, I wouldn't say you should not invest in gold coins. Gold coins and gold bars are one other good ways of investments. But the problem is the pledging against them, may not be easily possible. They are possible at some banks, but many banks, they look for jewelry kinds, and they might not directly take bars from retail customers. They actually take retail bars from gold companies. So yeah, compared to gold bonds, gold coins might look as a good investment in terms of liquidity perspective. if you're looking at say a target of about 3 years, yeah, a bond might look so not attractive. Rather, a coin will look attractive. What about mutual fund redemption at present as value has gone below their cost? Should we go for redemption or shall we wait? Dr. Adil Ahmed has asked this. So, sir, it is based upon your NAV purchase price and your current price. So, if it is in a loss and if you want to book the loss, it is up to you actually. So, I would say if you can book the loss and you can reinvest on the same fund if you believe that the fund is going to go up, or if you feel that fund is not going to go up, no, you have to shift to a different funds. Say for example, you are in a mid cap fund and you feel the mid cap and the small cap are a little bit crumbled for the next couple of quarters, and whereas the large cap, they are going to sustain and they are going to push the market. So if you want to move out from a mid cap market and put it into a large cap market, yes, I would say, yeah, go ahead and do it. But if you were to you're not sure about moving anywhere, rather you just want to see whether you have to stay or just take away your cash and put your cash in some other place, say for example an FD or something, I would say not do that, because all your mutual funds are managed by very good fund managers across the country. So they will make it look profitable. Maybe not at least in the next quarter, but if you see a longer span in terms of 5 to 10 years, mutual funds have always been a very good performer for people who do not know how to manage their money. Is SIP advisable? Yes, for people who earn salaries or who have a monthly income, SIP is advisable, as lump sum investment will not be possible. What about gold ETF? Priya has asked me this question. Yeah, gold ETF is a very good option. I myself prefer gold ETFs over gold coins and bonds. They are easily liquefiable, and they always have takers on the market. They will never go dormant. So gold ETF is a good option, and they directly trade in terms of the price of gold. Plus, there is not your GST charges involved, which you pay in your coins and your bars. So yeah, gold ETF is a good option.
Tamil Maran.
Okay, sir. Hello.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Nice
thank you.
presentation. Now I invite Professor Tamil Maran to give a vote of thanks.
So good evening, sir. Audible, sir.
Yes, audible.
Very good evening to everyone gathered here. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose of a vote of thanks on this occasion. I, on behalf of the School of Commerce, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to the honorable delegates who blessed us their presence and out of the valuable time for your busy schedule. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation, Mr. P. Anusraj, Research Analyst, Equity Stocks and Mutual Fund, Head of Finance and Marketing, for his work. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the excellent session, sir. I also wish to express my gratitude to our principal, both Vice Principal, IQC, and Placement Officer for providing the encouragement and on the wonderful support. I extend very grateful to the Head of the Department, Professor VK Gayatri, for giving us an opportunity to organize this event. I heartily congratulate all the participants for their active participation in this session. Once again, thanks to everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tamil Maran. Thank you, everyone.